My sister almost killed my son so she could have a drink. When I texted her from the hospital that he might not make it, she replied, "You're so dramatic. He's fine." That was 11 months ago. Yesterday, she was on her knees begging me to stop. I found my son on a bar stool, his face bright red, his clothes soaked through with sweat, crying so hard he couldn't breathe. My sister sat 3 feet away with a cocktail in her hand. She had locked him in her car in 90-degree heat, windows up, doors sealed, for over 30 minutes, so she could drink. When I grabbed him and asked what the hell was wrong with her, she laughed and said, "Relax. Kids are tougher than you think." The hospital kept him overnight. Severe dehydration, heat exhaustion, he almost died. Her only response was a text. "You're so dramatic. He's fine." My parents said I was being too harsh, that she made a mistake, that families forgive. When I cut her off, she started stalking us, showing up at 2 a.m., building a wall covered with photos of my baby, planning to rescue him. I got a restraining order. She violated it. My parents helped her. Now she's demanding I let her back into his life. This is what happened. Growing up, Diana and I existed in the same house, without ever really knowing each other. We shared a bedroom until I turned 13, but I couldn't tell you her favorite color or what music she listened to through her headphones. We weren't enemies. We were strangers who happened to share parents. The distance suited both of us. Some sisters braid each other's hair and share secrets under the covers at midnight. We nodded politely at breakfast and closed our doors the moment we got home from school. Everything shifted the year Diana turned 21. Her birthday party started with champagne toasts and ended with her passed out in the bathroom at 3 a.m. I thought it was just a wild night, the kind everyone has once in their 20s, before they learn their limits. But the wild nights kept coming, first on weekends, then on random Tuesdays, then pretty much whenever she had an excuse. Work stress, breakup pain, friend drama. The reasons changed, the bottle stayed the same. I watched her sink deeper month by month, and I kept waiting for someone to throw her a rope. Our parents saw what I saw. They watched her stumble through Christmas dinner, slur her words at Dad's retirement party, show up to Easter brunch reeking of last night's wine. They never said a word. Mom would make excuses about work pressure and quarter-life crisis and needing to blow off steam. Dad would change the subject whenever I tried to bring it up. "Diana's fine," they'd say. "She's just going through something. Give her time." But time kept passing and Diana kept drinking, and nobody seemed willing to admit that this wasn't a phase anymore. I met Marcus during my last year of college. He was steady in a way that felt foreign to me, a man who said what he meant and did what he said. We dated for 2 years, got engaged on a hiking trail in Colorado, and planned a small wedding for the following spring. Diana came to the engagement party 3 hours late and already buzzed. She knocked over a tray of appetizers, made a toast that rambled for 6 minutes about nothing, and cornered Marcus in the kitchen to ask if he had any single friends who might want to take a chance on her. I should have seen the pattern then. I should have drawn a harder line. When I got pregnant at 27, Diana suddenly wanted to be the world's greatest aunt. She called every week asking about my cravings and the nursery colors and whether I'd picked out names yet. She bought onesies and stuffed animals and a rocking chair that cost more than my first car. Part of me wanted to believe that becoming an aunt might give her a reason to pull herself together. Part of me was desperate enough for family connection that I ignored every warning sign my gut was sending. My son, Ethan, was born on a rainy Thursday morning after 18 hours of labor. I'd never felt exhaustion like that, the kind that seeps into your bones and makes the world feel like it's wrapped in cotton. Diana showed up at the hospital that evening. I smelled the alcohol before she made it through the door. She was carrying balloons and a teddy bear and a bottle of champagne, swaying slightly as she walked toward my bed. Her words ran together when she tried to congratulate me, syllables bleeding into each other like watercolors in the rain. The nurse stepped between Diana and the baby before I could even react. "Ma'am, you can't hold the infant in your current state." Diana's face crumpled. She started crying in the hallway, loud enough that other families poked their heads out to see what was happening. She kept saying I was keeping her nephew from her, that nobody trusted her, that everyone always assumed the worst. Marcus walked her to the elevator while I sat in my hospital bed, holding my newborn son, wondering why I ever thought she could change. I gave her one more chance. Looking back, I don't know why. Maybe I wanted Ethan to have an aunt. Maybe I still believed in the version of Diana I'd imagined as a child, the sister I never actually had. The rules were simple. No drinking before visiting. No alcohol anywhere near my baby. No exceptions, no excuses, no negotiations. She agreed instantly, apologizing for the hospital, promising she understood, swearing she'd respect my boundaries this time. For 3 months, she mostly kept her word. She showed up sober, brought little outfits for Ethan, sat with him while I folded laundry or caught up on sleep. Sometimes I caught a faint sourness on her breath, that unmistakable smell that seeps through your pores the morning after a heavy night. But she wasn't actively drinking around him, and I convinced myself that was progress enough. Then came the 4th of July. Marcus pulled a double shift at the hospital, so I invited Diana over for a quiet afternoon. No fireworks, no big plans, just the backyard and the baby pool and Ethan practicing his wobbly first steps across the grass. She showed up carrying a cooler, When she popped the lid, I saw 6 bottles of hard seltzer packed in ice. I reminded her of the rule before she could crack one open. She rolled her eyes. It's a holiday. One drink isn't going to hurt anything. You need to relax. I told her she could drink later, at her own place, after she left. Today wasn't the day. We argued for 10 minutes. She called me controlling. I called her selfish. Eventually, she grabbed the cooler and hauled it back to her car, huffing the entire way like I was the unreasonable one. The rest of the afternoon went fine. Ethan splashed in his little pool, Diana helped him chase bubbles across the lawn, and for a few hours I let myself pretend everything was normal. Around 4 o'clock, she said she needed to grab something from her car. Phone charger. Back in a minute. I was changing Ethan's diaper on the patio table. I barely looked up when she walked around the corner of the house. 20 minutes later, she still hadn't come back. The sick feeling started slow, just a flutter in my stomach. I picked up Ethan and walked around to the driveway, expecting to see her car still parked there. Maybe Diana sitting inside scrolling through her phone. The driveway was empty, her car was gone, and so was Ethan's car seat, the spare one I'd stupidly left on my porch after our last trip to the pediatrician. I called her phone 4 times. No answer. Called my mom, who hadn't heard from her. Called Diana's roommate, who had no idea where she was. 40 minutes passed, then an hour. I was dialing 911 when my phone finally rang. A man's voice I didn't recognize. Is this Ethan's mom? This is Tom. I tend bar at Murphy's over on Highland. Your sister's here and there's a kid involved. You need to come now. I don't remember the drive. I remember my hands shaking on the steering wheel and every red light, feeling like it lasted an hour. And the prayer I kept repeating under my breath, please let him be okay. Please let him be okay. Please let him be okay. Murphy's was a dive bar 3 blocks from the highway. Neon beer signs in grimy windows. Gravel parking lot half empty in the afternoon heat. I spotted Diana's silver Honda immediately, parked crooked across 2 spaces. The windows were up, the doors were locked. Through the tinted glass, I could see Ethan's car seat in the back, empty. I sprinted inside. The sudden darkness made me blind for a few seconds. My eyes adjusted, and I scanned the room, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Diana sat at the bar, her back to the door, a nearly empty glass in front of her. The bartender stood nearby with a wet towel in his hands and an expression like he was trying very hard not to start yelling. And next to Diana, perched on a bar stool with no seatbelt, no support, nothing to keep him from falling, was my 15-month-old son. His face was the color of a ripe tomato. His clothes were drenched with sweat, plastered to his body like a second skin. He was crying, but weakly, like he didn't have the energy left for full screams. I crossed the room in 3 steps. What the hell is wrong with you? Diana spun around on her stool, her eyes unfocused, taking a moment too long to recognize me. Then she smiled. That sloppy, drunk smile that made me want to put my fist through the wall. Hey, I was just having one drink. He was sleeping in the car. I didn't want to wake him up. No big deal. My voice came out shaking. You left him in a locked car in 90-degree heat? Diana waved her hand dismissively, nearly knocking over her glass. The windows were cracked. He's fine. Look at him. You always overreact. The bartender stepped forward before I could respond. Windows weren't cracked, he said flatly. I went out for a smoke and heard screaming from the parking lot. Took me 15 minutes to figure out whose car it was because she wouldn't answer her phone. Another 10 to convince her to give me the keys. That kid's been out of the car maybe 20 minutes. Before that, he was in there at least half an hour, in a sealed car, in July, in Texas. I grabbed Ethan and held him against my chest, checking his skin temperature, his breathing, the color of his lips. He was burning up. His eyes looked glazed. His diaper was soaked through, and he smelled like salt and fear. I didn't say another word to Diana. I just turned and walked out, my son clinging to me with whatever strength he had left. The emergency room kept Ethan overnight. Severe dehydration, heat exhaustion. They ran tests for organ damage, for brain swelling, for everything that could go wrong when a baby cooks in a car. Marcus and I sat in that fluorescent waiting room, holding hands so tight our knuckles went white. Every time a doctor walked past, my heart stopped. At 2 a.m., they finally told us he would be okay. No permanent damage detected. But we needed to watch him closely for the next few weeks, look for any changes in behavior or development that might indicate complications. The relief hit me so hard my knees buckled. Marcus caught me before I hit the floor. But underneath that relief was a rage so deep I couldn't see the bottom. 3 days later, a woman named Patricia from Child Protective Services showed up at our door with a clipboard and a list of questions. For the next 2 hours, she interviewed us like we were the criminals. She wanted to know about our home environment, our schedules, our parenting philosophy. She asked whether we'd known about Diana's drinking problem before leaving Ethan with her. She asked why we hadn't acted sooner to protect him. She asked whether there were any other family members with substance abuse issues. Every question felt like an accusation, like we were the ones who'd locked a baby in a hot car while we drank. Patricia visited 3 more times over the next 2 weeks. She inspected Ethan's room, checked our refrigerator, watched how we interacted with him during feeding time. She talked to our neighbors, our pediatrician, Marcus's boss. Meanwhile, Diana faced no investigation at all, no home visits, no interviews, no consequences whatsoever. When I called Patricia to ask why, her answer made me want to throw my phone across the room. Our priority is ensuring the child's current environment is safe. Your sister isn't the custodial parent, so she's not within our investigation scope. If you have concerns about her behavior, you can file a police report. I went to the police station the next day, sat across from a detective named Brennan who listened to my story while typing notes into his computer. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. Look, I understand this was scary, but your son is okay. Your sister didn't intend to hurt him. In cases like this, unless there's serious injury or fatality, it's really hard to pursue criminal charges. She locked a baby in a car in 90-degree heat, I said. That's not negligence? It's definitely negligence, he agreed. But proving criminal intent is another matter. She was intoxicated, so her judgment was impaired. Any decent lawyer would argue she didn't understand the danger. So being drunk is a defense? I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying that's how these cases usually go. If you want to pursue charges, you can. But I'm being honest with you about the likely outcome. I left the station feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. The system wasn't going to protect my son. I was on my own. I tried calling Diana once after we got home from the hospital. She didn't answer. I left a voicemail. My voice was steady, even though my hands were shaking. I told her exactly what she'd done. I told her she could have killed my son. I told her I never wanted to see her again. She texted back 2 hours later. Wow, dramatic much? He's fine. Kids are tougher than you think. You need to chill. That text ended any remaining hope I had for my sister. I blocked her number, blocked her on every social media platform, told my parents that if they wanted to see Ethan, they couldn't share any information about us with Diana. Not our address, not our schedule, not even pictures. Mom cried and said I was being too harsh. Dad insisted Diana didn't mean any harm. She just made a mistake. I told them that leaving a baby to die in a hot car so you can get drunk isn't a mistake. It's a choice. And it's a choice that should have killed their grandson. They stopped arguing after that. But I could see in their eyes that they didn't really agree. In their minds, I was the problem. I was the one being unforgiving. 3 weeks of silence passed. Then Mom called with an invitation to Sunday dinner. She promised Diana wouldn't be there. Just family, she said, like old times. Marcus and I debated for days before finally agreeing. We missed my parents. And despite everything, I didn't want Ethan to grow up without grandparents because of something his aunt did. We showed up at 5 o'clock with cautious optimism. Mom greeted us with Ethan's favorite crackers. Dad asked Marcus about work. Everything felt almost normal. Then I heard footsteps on the stairs. That familiar rhythm that made my whole body tense before my brain caught up. Diana walked into the living room holding a glass of wine. She looked surprised to see us, but the surprise was obviously fake. This was a setup. My parents had planned this. I didn't say a word. I picked up Ethan, grabbed his diaper bag, and walked straight to the door. Mom called after us, her voice breaking. We just wanted everyone together. Diana's been asking about him. She misses you both so much. I kept walking. Marcus stopped long enough to tell them they'd broken our trust and that was unforgivable. Then he followed me out. Dad called that night. Marcus hung up without answering. The next week, Diana showed up at our house unannounced. She knocked for 15 minutes, yelling through the door that she just wanted to see Ethan, that she was sorry, that she was getting sober for him. We sat inside in the dark, listening to her voice get more desperate, waiting for her to leave. The second time, she came at 2 a.m. drunk, pounding on our door hard enough to wake the neighbors, screaming that she had rights as an aunt, that we couldn't keep her nephew from her forever. I called the police. They escorted her home and told her not to come back. She was back 3 days later. This time, she didn't knock. She walked around the side of the house and stood in our backyard for 20 minutes, staring at Ethan's window. Marcus found her when he went out to check a noise. She ran before he could confront her, but our security camera caught everything. I found a lawyer named Christine who specialized in family restraining orders. She looked at our evidence, the hospital records, the police reports, the camera footage, and explained that judges were often reluctant to separate family members without serious proof of ongoing threat. But we have proof, I said. You have concerning behavior, she agreed. Whether a judge finds it threatening enough is another question. Family cases are complicated. I've seen worse situations than this get denied. She filed the paperwork anyway. Our hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. A week before our hearing, Diana's roommate called me. I almost didn't answer. I didn't know the number, and I'd been screening calls religiously since the stalking started. But something made me pick up. Her voice was shaking. Hi, this is Taylor. I live with Diana. I think you need to know something. Taylor explained that Diana had been getting worse, drinking more heavily than ever, going out at all hours, coming home at 3 a.m. and sitting in the dark talking to herself. But that wasn't why she called. There's a wall in her room. Taylor said. She's covered it with pictures of your baby, printed from Facebook, from Instagram, from before you blocked her. She's got his pediatrician's address taped up there, your husband's work schedule, a map with routes highlighted. My stomach dropped. She talks about rescuing him, Taylor continued. She says you're not a fit mother. She says she's going to prove it. I don't know what she's planning, but it scares me. I thanked Taylor for the warning. Then I called Christine and told her everything. She added this information to our filing as an emergency addendum, but she warned me that secondhand statements from roommates weren't always enough. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, an American flag drooping in the corner. Diana sat at a table across the aisle with a lawyer I didn't recognize, a man in an expensive suit who kept checking his phone. The judge was a woman in her 60s with gray hair and reading glasses perched on her nose. She reviewed our documentation silently for several minutes before looking up. I went first. I walked through everything as calmly as I could. The bar, the hospital, the midnight visits, the shrine Taylor had described. Then Diana's lawyer stood up. My client acknowledges making poor choices while struggling with addiction, he said smoothly. But she's actively seeking help. She's attended AA meetings. She's working with a therapist. This restraining order would sever family bonds during a critical period of her recovery. Diana started crying on cue, perfect tears rolling down her cheeks. I love my nephew more than anything, she said, her voice breaking. I made one terrible mistake. One. And now my sister wants to punish me forever. She's using my addiction against me instead of supporting my recovery. The judge looked at me. Is there anything you'd like to add? I took a breath. Your Honor, my sister didn't make one mistake. She made a series of choices. She chose to bring alcohol to my house after promising not to. She chose to steal my baby's car seat from my porch. She chose to drive him to a bar. She chose to lock him in a hot car. She chose to sit inside drinking while he screamed. And when confronted, she chose to say kids are tougher than you think. I paused. Now she's building a wall with his pictures and mapping routes to our home and talking about rescuing him. I don't know what she's planning. I just know that my son's safety is not a testing ground for her recovery. The judge was quiet for a long moment. Then she granted a temporary restraining order. Diana had to stay 500 feet away from us, our home, and Ethan's daycare. The order was good for 6 months, after which we'd have another hearing to decide if it should be made permanent. Diana's face, when the judge announced her decision, was something I'll never forget. Not sadness, not acceptance. Rage. Pure, cold rage. 2 weeks before the permanent hearing, our security camera caught Diana's car parked across the street at midnight. She sat there for 40 minutes, engine running, just watching our house. Marcus went outside to confront her. She drove away before he got close. A week later, Ethan's daycare called. A woman matching Diana's description had toured the facility, asking about enrollment procedures and nap time schedules. The director felt something was off and called to verify. We pulled Ethan from that daycare the same day. Mom called constantly during this time, begging me to drop the restraining order, saying Diana was really trying, saying families are supposed to forgive and move forward together. Diana's recovery isn't my responsibility, I told her. Ethan's safety is. Mom's voice went cold. You're choosing anger over love. Then she hung up. The permanent hearing came 6 months after the first one. Diana's lawyer showed up with documentation this time. Letters from a rehab facility, AA attendance records, a therapist's letter describing her progress. He argued she'd done everything the court asked and deserved a chance at supervised visitation. The judge looked at me. Would you be willing to consider supervised visits? This was the moment I'd been dreading, the place where I had to choose between looking heartless and compromising my son's safety. I said no, clearly, without hesitation. The judge asked why. 6 months doesn't erase what happened, I said. Diana didn't just make a mistake that day. She made a choice. She chose alcohol over my son's life, and that choice showed me who she really is when things get hard. I looked directly at Diana. The fact that she locked a baby in a car to go drink. The fact that she sat there while he screamed. The fact that she texted me afterwards saying kids are tougher than I think. All of that showed a level of dysfunction that no amount of AA meetings can fix in half a year. The courtroom was silent. Maybe she can get sober, I continued. I hope she does. But my son's childhood is not the place to test whether that sobriety will stick. His safety is not negotiable. And until she's proven, over years, not months, that she can be trusted, she doesn't get access to him. The judge made the restraining order permanent. 3 years, with the possibility of extension. Diana sat frozen at her table. Then she stood up suddenly, knocking her chair backwards. You don't get to do this, she screamed. He's my nephew. You can't keep him from me. You're not even a good mother. You're paranoid and controlling, and you're going to ruin him. The bailiff moved toward her. Diana's lawyer grabbed her arm, but Diana wasn't finished. She pointed at me across the courtroom, her face twisted with something beyond anger. This isn't over. Blood doesn't disappear with a piece of paper. I'll see him again. One way or another, I'll see him again. The bailiff escorted her out while she was still screaming. I looked at my parents in the gallery. Mom was crying into Dad's shoulder. Dad stared at me like I was a stranger. They didn't come to hug me or tell me I'd done the right thing. They didn't say anything at all. They just left. Diana violated the order within weeks. She showed up at my parents' house during a family dinner they'd promised she wouldn't attend. I should have known better. I should have stopped trusting them months ago. But Dad had called saying he was having health problems, wanted to see his grandson one more time. And despite everything, I still wanted to believe my parents would choose their grandson's safety over their daughter's feelings. We walked in, and there she was, sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee like nothing was wrong. Mom started crying immediately. I couldn't keep my own daughter away, she sobbed. This has to stop. You need to forgive her. That's what families do. I picked up Ethan and left without a word. That was 11 months ago. I haven't seen my parents since. They call sometimes, leave voicemails asking about Ethan, saying they miss him, saying they hope I'll come around eventually. But they never apologize. They never admit they were wrong. They never choose my son over Diana. I don't think they ever will. Last week, a letter arrived from a therapist I'd never heard of, Dr. Reeves. The letter said Diana had been sober for over a year. She was making amends as part of her recovery program. She wanted the chance to apologize to me properly, in a controlled environment with professional support. She wasn't asking to see Ethan. Just me. Just a conversation. Marcus thinks it's manipulation. Another tactic. Another attempt to worm her way back in. Part of me agrees. But another part of me wonders if I'll ever stop being angry. If I'll ever stop checking the locks twice before bed. If I'll ever stop looking over my shoulder in parking lots while loading Ethan into his car seat. Diana rewired something in my brain that day at Murphy's. She taught me that the people who should protect you can be the ones who hurt you most. She taught me that family loyalty is a story people tell to excuse the inexcusable. I don't know if I'll ever respond to that letter. I don't know if I'll ever be able to look at my sister without seeing Ethan's red face and soaked clothes and the bartender's voice on the phone saying there's a situation with a baby. What I do know is this. I protected my son. I made the choices I had to make, and I would make them again without hesitation, even knowing what they cost me. My parents barely speak to me now. My sister shows up in my nightmares, always holding that cocktail, always smiling like everything's fine. The family I grew up in is permanently broken, and I am the one everyone blames for breaking it. But Ethan is safe. Ethan is healthy. Ethan doesn't have to grow up wondering why the adults in his life kept giving second chances to someone who didn't deserve them. People ask me sometimes if I've forgiven my sister. Friends who don't understand the situation. Co-workers who've heard bits and pieces. Relatives who got Diana's version filtered through my parents. I haven't forgiven her. I'm not sure. I want to. Forgiveness feels like saying what she did was okay. Like I'm supposed to get over it because time has passed and she says she's changed. But what she did will never be okay. She chose alcohol over my son's life. My parents chose protecting her over protecting him. Those choices have consequences that don't disappear because everyone's tired of the conflict. Maybe someday I'll think about that day at Murphy's without feeling sick. Maybe someday I won't wake up in a panic, checking that Ethan is still breathing. My hand on his little chest, feeling for that rise and fall that tells me he's alive and safe. But that day isn't today. I protected my son. That's what matters. Even if it cost me my parents, my sister, and whatever naive belief I had, that family loyalty meant something real. Some people might call that unforgiving. They might call it harsh or cold or vindictive. I call it being a mother.